Hi there, I'm Veronica and I'm here to present a series of videos to help you become a more fluent English speaker. Many people who decide to start learning English believe that it's best to start with a lot of grammar, a lot of rules, a lot of verbs. After all, this is probably the way they were taught at school if they've ever learned a language. And unfortunately, it's still the way many language schools around the world teach English. Now, the problem with this approach is that English isn't a logical language. You could study the rules of grammar until the cows came home, and that still wouldn't make you a fluent speaker of the language. I'm going to repeat that. You could study the rules of grammar until the cows came home, but you still wouldn't be a fluent speaker. One of the reasons I encourage my students to watch a lot of English language programs on television, a lot of films, is because a lot of this wonderful, wonderful language we call English is made up of so many idioms and collocations. It's much more useful for students who want to improve to learn these rather than studying endless and boring lists of irregular verbs. It's also a lot more fun. So in fact, unless you have so much spare time that you don't know what to do with yourself, you're much better off learning English in chunks or phrases rather than trying to make up sentences from the grammatical structures that you've learned. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating discarding verbs altogether. They are an essential part of the language after all. But what I am proposing is a different approach to learning English. Did you know, for example, that there are over 10,000 phrasal verbs in the English language? I'm not saying this to frighten you, but to make you aware that this is an important part of the language and one that isn't given enough priority in most traditional learning programs. Even if you could conjugate verbs until the cows came home, it still wouldn't help you to understand a large proportion of the everyday language that most people speak. Let's have a look at a little three-letter word which is so often used by native speakers. The word is get, G-E-T. For those of you hooked on grammar, the word get can be used as a noun or as a verb. Now, the word get is most commonly found linked or joined with other words, mostly in collocations or phrasal verbs. Many native English speakers use this word to replace a number of other verbs. So it's really important to understand how and when to use this word. And although I don't like to focus on grammar too much, I do need to tell you about got, which is simply the past tense of get. You may also hear native American English speakers use the word gotten. You'll probably hear that in a lot of American television programs or films. Just be aware that this is another variation of the word get, but it's not one that's employed as much by non-American English speakers. Okay, so the word get. Here are a few examples that you might come across in everyday English conversations. So here's the challenge. Start noticing every time this word comes up in conversations or on television, in movies, in newspaper articles. Next time you're watching a film or reading an article, see how many times it comes up. And don't forget to include the word got as well, which is just the past tense of get.